nice. Thank you so much. Thank you. I love being here. Thank you so much. Thank you. I am a great fan of ILF, and I am so thrilled to be here because my father is with me tonight. He came all the way from New York just to attend. Well, thank you, Chilling, for that wonderful introduction. Congratulations to ILF's Board of Directors. You support a great organization. Congratulations to tonight's awardees, and also, of course, to the ILF interns, who are the future leaders of our country. I also want to acknowledge the very special presence of Congresswoman Barbara Comstock, who is such an advocate for our community. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here. We also have Congresswoman Coleman Wadawagan and her daughter, who I remember when she was just a little girl. And I also want to acknowledge our place. And also Mayor Alan Bone, who is here as well. Mr. Mayor, we thank you for your leadership in the public sector. And State Senator Tony Wong from Connecticut, my sister's home state, thank you for your service as well. And then my predecessor, we call him Chairman, Secretary Norman Eder. As I mentioned, I come to ILF all the time, but tonight is a special night because I'm accompanied by my father, who's being honored tonight. You know, there's so many heartwarming stories and achievements to celebrate among the leaders in this audience. Many of you have come from great distances to be here tonight, but I hope that I may share with you the story of my parents, because I think they're emblematic of the struggles and also the triumph of the human spirit. My parents have a wonderful love story, and their love story is captured in this biography entitled Fearless Against the Wind. My mother came from a very distinguished family in Anhui Province. My father, a handsome, very capable young man, grew up in a small farming village of 10 families outside of Shanghai in Jiading County. Under ordinary circumstances, these two young people of such disparate backgrounds would never have had a chance to meet. But the Chinese Civil War and the resulting social turmoil tore down societal norms. They were able to meet, fall in love, and embark upon an incredible journey together. And despite every challenge, their love never wavered. They remained true to their family, their faith, and their traditions. So I hope you'll share with me, I hope you'll let me share with you some of the inspiring events of their lives in a slideshow that I put together of old family pictures. So the first one is a picture of my father at the age of 8. Is he not cute? Next to his house. The next picture is a picture of daily life in his native village. He's the one in the back. I don't know how to, I can't bring this. Maybe over there, no, one more. So even though my father came from a very modest beginning, he came from an educated family where education was key. His father was a school principal and devoted his whole life ensuring access to education for the rural children in that region. The next slide, my father won scholarships after scholarships to be able to go to school. That was the only way he was able to go to school. He was an excellent student, but even more outstandingly, a superb athlete. This picture shows his natural leadership qualities. You can see him in the middle of the picture, where he's the captain of his basketball and soccer teams. This is a wonderful picture. It chronicles the moment that my parents meet. In 1949, my father, the big man on campus, returns from college and goes to visit his old high school, Jiading High School number 1. There, the school was totally abuzz with talk about this beautiful young woman from Nanjing who had just moved into town, Ruth Mulan Xu, Zhu Mulan. They were introduced through mutual friends, and this is the first picture of my father and my mother upon their meeting. And as you can see, once again, he's in the center of attention, the big man on campus, right in the middle. My mother's family left their ancestral estate due to the Civil War chaos. They went first to Nanjing, where times were unsafe, and they sought safety in Shanghai. And that's how she got to Jiading, a suburb of Shanghai. And as you can tell, she's 18 years old. She was rather subdued. Life was already very hard. This is a picture of my dad, who was a great philosopher and a photography buff. His uncle gave him a second-hand camera, which had a remote control. So my father, to this day, loves technology. He can text, he can email, he can do iPad. And he loved taking pictures for everybody. So in all of these pictures, he would take the pictures for everybody else, set up a photo, put the timer on, and run to the back of the people. That's why all these pictures, he's always in the back. You can see that my grandfather is very tall for a Chinese man. He's 6'2". My grandmother next to him was also very tall for a Chinese woman. She was 5'5", which is why I was this height at the age of 12, and people worried, my relatives worried that I would never find a husband. The next slide is a slide of my father at the age of 21. My father is studying marine navigation in university, and he's about to be commissioned a deck officer. And so very proudly, in 1949, he poses for this shot with his parents. This is the last picture he has with his parents. The next picture shows my father at the age of 22. About to graduate from university, and in May 1949, he has to go aboard a ship to gain the necessary seagoing experience to finish his degree. After all, his major was navigation. On this trip, you can see his ship goes to Guangzhou. You can see the confidence of this 22-year-old young man, so full of life and vitality. Little did he know at that moment that he would never be able to return to his own village for over 23 years. The Chinese Civil War climaxed, the government changed, the ports were blockaded. My father never saw his father again. I love this picture because this is also the picture on the book, cover of the book. This is a picture in December 1949, where he is now alone. The government has changed. All the ports in China were blockaded. He has no relatives, no friends, and he's serving as a cadet aboard a merchant vessel. He volunteers for war duty because that was the way for him to find a job and have room and board, sleeping on the vessel. And in this particular picture, he's on a merchant marine vessel in Jingmen, which is the conflict area between the communists and the nationalists. And his merchant marine vessel is taking depth soundings in the water in advance of the Taiwan military ships, one of which is in the background. Ships can run aground. There are mines in the water. Bombs are falling. It was dangerous. But ahead of my father, to the right, is a landmass, and that's mainland China. My father volunteered for this war duty, not only because of the lack of jobs, but also because it meant increased pay, room and board, but also being very sentimental. This was the closest piece of land that he can get to next to the mainland. He felt that being in this war zone brought him closer to his parents, where he can close his eyes and imagine his parents going about their daily activities without their only child in their native village outside of Shanghai. But my father, being very smart and diligent, quickly ascends the ranks. He quickly becomes second officer, and here he is on watch as a second officer. This is another picture of him as a young second officer. You can tell that even though he's all alone in the world, he displays such confidence, vitality, and hope and determination for the future. Now let me tell you about my mother's story. My mother's story is a bit different. She came from a distinguished and prosperous family in Anhui province. This is a picture of her in Nanjing at the Mingde Women's High School. Only very wealthy families send their daughters to school. My mother's estate, from end to end, took 3 days to cover on horseback. They left Anhui province because of the turmoil due to the Civil War, and they resettled in Nanjing, but soon thereafter had to move again, seeking safety and security in Shanghai. This is a photograph of my mother with her new classmates at Jiading High School No. 1. She had just relocated to Jiading from Nanjing. Gradually, she makes friends with her classmates, and this is a photo of a casual day with her new classmates enjoying the day off. This is a very famous lake in Jiading. It's still there today. Here, my mother, Zhao Zhongmulan, actually, she wasn't Zhao, she was just a Zhongmulan. She is rowing a boat with her classmate, Zhang Zheng, and her then boyfriend, who introduced my mother and my father. This is the picture of 18-year-old Zhongmulan, Ruth, with whom my father fell in love. But they knew they were too young for romance, as both had to finish their studies. So in May 1949, due to the Civil War, Ruth and her family were able to relocate to Taipei, Taiwan. My father also arrived in Taiwan, thinking that my mother, because she came from a wealthy family, had to be on Taiwan. He looked for her for 2 years. He finally finds her, begins to court her, and it wasn't easy. My maternal grandparents were very hesitant, but he won over not only my mother, but also her parents. And this is a picture of their courtship days in Taipei. The good news is, on November 12, 1951, James and Ruth are married. Next slide shows they start a family. My father continues to ascend rapidly in his career. He is now the youngest sea captain of his time at the age of 29. Here he is on home leave aboard his ship with his wife and firstborn daughter. Then she looked cute. The sea life is really difficult. He was always away at sea, so my parents decided to seek a better life. My father takes the national examinations. It's given once a year. You don't have an excuse. It's 4 days, once a year. He not only scores number 1, but breaks all the records. And this is a photograph of the certificate saying that he's the youngest sea captain at the age of 29. As I mentioned, he breaks all the records, scores number 1, and he gets the chance to go to America. By that time, my mother was 7 months pregnant with their 3rd child, and yet she was so brave. She supported his decision to go to America to pursue a better life with family. So he has no money. How's he going to get to America? He's a captain, remember? So he piloted a ship from Taipei to Tokyo Bay, and then from Tokyo Bay to Vancouver, where this picture is taken. And this is a picture of all his shipmates coming to bid him farewell at the port of Vancouver. From the port of Vancouver, he boards Northwest Airlines, next slide, all by himself. From Portland, he goes to New York, and he still remembers that a sandwich cost him $1.85, a fortune at the time. Oops, that one. Newly arrived in New York, he had a very difficult time. Fortunately, there was a Christian couple by the name of Gordon and Ruth Tewksbury who taught him English. Next slide. It takes my father 3 years before he was able to bring us to America. By that time, daughter number 3 was 3 years old. It took us 37 days aboard a ship to come across to America. This is a picture of my parents on their first night after 3 years of separation, involuntary separation. And this is a picture of our first evening in New York City as a reunited family, July 18, 1961. So you now know how old I am. Our initial years here in America, next slide, were very difficult. And I love this picture because it shows my mother so resolute and determined to help her husband and her family establish a foothold in this new country. And I love this picture too, because this is a photo of our first one-bedroom apartment in New York City. And I still remember the address, 14155 85th Road in Jamaica. The next picture shows the end of a wonderful day for the little family just recently reunited in Central Park. We had so little, so we partook of all the free things, museums, Central Park, Coney Island, Orchard Beach. My father was just tireless in taking us to all these different places, and that's how we learned about America. Soon thereafter, my father got his MBA from St. John's University, and this is a picture of him and my mother on his graduation day. After graduating, my father establishes his company, and he begins working on the company. This is a picture of my parents as they are bound to leave for Taiwan for the very first visit after getting here in 1961. It took them 8 years before they were able to go back. In 1973, President Nixon opens up China. My father was among the very first Americans to go back to China with the sole purpose of reuniting with his mother, whom he had not seen since May 1949, 23 years ago. He was able to bring her to America, and here's a photo of my grandmother with the family at church on Sunday. My father is actually a very progressive man. Not only did he empower his 6 daughters, but he was also very supportive of my mother. Here she is, finally able to complete her education, interrupted by the Civil War, graduating with a master's degree in Asian Studies and History at the age of 51. We're really very blessed. My parents have worked extraordinarily hard. This is a wonderful country that allows people the opportunity to achieve their dreams. So here's a picture of our residence and part of the background when daughter number 5, Grace Chow, gets married. The arc of my father's journey is not one that he would have foreseen when he was a young student who left mainland China in 1949. But he subsequently becomes very successful. Not yet, go back to the other first one. But he becomes subsequently very successful. Not in financial wealth. Not only that, but in life's greatest treasures. And that's the love of his family, the respect of his friends,